Hello there everybody, welcome to the Entertainment Headquarters, your headquarters where we talk all things entertainment, movies, television, news, reviews and more. And right now it's review time and let's get cracking. As you know, many years ago we were introduced to the world of John Wick. It started off as a independent, or if not independent, low budget action film that took the world by storm. It was meant to be a one and done with Keanu Reeves, an amazing revenge story, which then spiraled into a franchise that has, like I said before, taken the world by storm, and it has built a very interconnecting, very interesting world of assassins, criminals, the underworld, and how it all works. And right now, after the success of John Wick 4, we are now being introduced to a new world, a prequel. And this is the Continental, which is all about Winston Scott, who was marvelously played by Ian McShane within the John Wick franchise films. But now this is his backstory on how he became the manager and the person in charge of the Continental in New York City. And this takes place in the 1970s. It was a 3-episode mini event, and the story is quite interesting. But let's talk a little bit about the cast. Of course, we have playing the younger version of Winston Scott. We have, let's have a look at my notes. We have Colin Woodhill, who is playing the young Winston Scott. You have Ben Robson playing Francis Patrick, who is Winston Scott's younger brother. We have Mel Gibson. We all know Mel Gibson. He's an amazing, legendary actor, director, producer. He's done amazing work, both as an actor and a kind of director. He's kind of been blackballed for a while in Hollywood, which we'll not get into. But now he's kind of making a bit of a strong comeback. And this was his first attempt of that strong comeback. You also have a load of minor characters that are, just like the John Wick films, all play their own part within the series. And one of those is played by Michelle Prada. She plays KD, who's like a small town detective. You have Jeremy Bobb, who plays a sleazy cop called Mayhew. We have Adam Shapiro playing Lemmy. If I get any of the names wrong, I do apologise. My pronunciation skills are crap. We also have Jessica Allen playing Lou. I can't even pronounce this person's name, and I'm frightened to get it wrong, but he's playing the younger version of Sharon. Iomed Adgun is what I think his name is. If I've got that wrong, if it sounds terrible, I do apologise. But he's playing the younger version of Sharon, who was played by the fantastic Lance Reddick, who we sadly lost during the premiere, or not long after the premiere of John Wick 4. But he will be making one more appearance within the world of John Wick, which I will talk about. We then have a host of other amazing actors and characters within this world. Um, Hubert Point de Jour plays Miles, which is Lou's brother. So now that I've talked about a handful of the characters and pronounced their names terribly, let's get on with the plot. So it's based in the early 1970s. We see in the first half of the first part of the first episode, we see a young Winston and a young Frankie. Basically, as kids held in a police station, they've been involved in some sort of criminal incident, which turns out to be an arson attack on a house that was set up by the Mel Gibson's character, who is Cormac, who is basically the leader and the manager of the New York Continental in the 1970s. So we get that small setup. We then flash forward a few years later where they're now grown up. After this incident of this arson attack, which was set up by Cormac, we then see Frankie's went down the wrong path. He's continued to be associated with Cormac, and he tried to rebuild his life, but he's gotten suckered back in with him and into that world. Winston Scott, however, he went to London. He began building a career, trying to make millions. You do see some instances where he's kind of a bit of a con man. He basically manipulates married women, and he gets them to get on his side to help con their husbands out of millions of pounds. That was the start. And then we then see Frankie has made the decision that he wants to basically start kind of a new life. And he steals something from Cormac within the vault of the Continental, which is a press, which is used to create all of the coins, the gold coins that you see throughout the John Wick franchise, which is basically owned and operated by the High Table, which is the huge undercover assassins organization. And if you know the rules, once you're on Continental grounds, you are not allowed to conduct any business, no assassinations, no any kind of criminal activity. It all stops once you walk through the front doors of any Continental around the world. And because Frankie has stolen this press, those rules are thrown out the window, and Frankie's on the run. Cormac then kidnaps from London, brings to the Continental in New York City, Winston, and he's trying to hire him to find and track down his brother to get back the press before the High Table gets involved and decides to intervene, which would in turn cause a lot of problems for Cormac, including maybe his own demise. Throughout this plot, you are introduced to so many little subplots and so many other new characters, all interesting characters. Some you care for, some you don't give a shit about. But that is the basic premise and starting point for the Continental. It's about two brothers and somebody in the middle, which is Cormac, and all the other integral characters play a part. There's too much to kind of go into plot points, but what I will say in terms of what they will manage to do with the Continental is it's, for me personally, a very, very good counterpart to the John Wick franchise. It's a great prequel, in other words. I quite enjoyed it. There are elements that I didn't enjoy. The first episode, right off the back, it's so action-packed. It feels and looks like a John Wick production in terms of what they were able to do with the action. The first 15 minutes, they just blow you away when you see Frankie, pull together his little, scheme to steal the press from the vault of the Continental. how that all works out and how it was all put together. And then the action scenes where he's trying to escape and he's fighting the people within the grounds of the Continental. That was well put together. Some great fight choreography, some great stunt work, some great action sequences. They really put everything into the opening of the first episode. And I believe you need to start an episode, especially within the world of John Wick, when you know what you're getting with it. That you have to start with the bang to get your audience attached, to get them involved, to get them suckered in, to want to follow through. And I think they did an amazing job with the first episode. It ends quite it ends in a way where you do want to find out what's going to happen next. You get to introduce to all these other characters. Their subplots starting to slowly come together. But I want to focus mainly on the Winston, Scott, Cormac, and Frankie characters and their story, because for me, that's what it's about. Everything else is just a side story that's intervolved that leads up to the final of the Continental. So the second episode kind of took a little bit of a nosedive, where it wasn't as action packed. It was more character development between Winston Scott, Frankie, and Cormac. You do see kind of the history there, the building, the kind of backstory explored more between Frankie and Winston. You see the character of Cormac starting to get more desperate because he's desperate to find the press, because he's now members of the high table. The adjudicator, I think she's called, pays him a visit, and she'll look very unique because she's obviously been involved in some sort of accident. You don't really find out, I don't believe, what happened to her. I can't remember if I missed that bit. But she wears this mask that looks like the bottom half of, like, I would say, a geisha mask, or, you know, a very traditional mask with a lady's face covering the lower half of her jaw and mouth. And that was the beauty of that character, just that look alone. And she did, in some ways, become slightly intimidating. Things transpire throughout the second episode, and when we get to the third episode, it's all out war between Winston Scott and Cormac. Cormac is at the high point of his desperation, trying to get this press back, please the high table, and by the end, he kind of becomes a bit unravelled. Winston is now all about revenge, wanting to make Cormac pay, and Winston Scott has his team of people which he's gathered throughout the 3 episodes, who are the minor characters that come together. I will talk about 2 of the minor characters because I do think they're important and they have some of the best dialogues and some of the best action scenes within the Continental. One of them is played by Ray McKinnon, and he plays Jenkins, who is a sharpshooter rifle expert who, in the last episode, he pretends he's like a rat, an exterminator. He's there in an apartment trying to get, terminate some rats. He makes the lady, he forces her basically to leave her apartment to go to a hotel, because where her room is in the apartments across from the Continental, it's perfect view to be able to shoot and take out people within the Continental. He was an amazing character outside of Winston Scott and Cormac and Frankie. He was probably my favourite character. The other amazing character is the actress. I hope it's the right actress. She plays Frankie's wife, Winston Scott's brother. Her name is is, oh, I can't even see it. But she plays Yen, which is Frankie's wife. I think her name is Hung Kate. Nahung Kate. If I get that wrong, I'm her. Like I say, my pronunciation skills is crap. But if that is the name of the actress, her Nahung Kate, who played Jen, she is outstanding. She has probably for me the most interesting backstory of all of the minor characters. You see her meet Frankie when he was a soldier, and she basically was going to be a suicide bomber. It was what she was born to do, or what her family trained her to do, and he took her away from that life. And he basically gave her the opportunity to live a normal life. But she is skilled in great fighting techniques. She kicked a lot of asses. In my favourite scene of the third episode is when she's fighting the female villain on the top of the roof, where there's a water fountain and there's a scrap that happens, and there's a sequence in a scene that happens in that fight that truly blew me away. But yes, the final episode really picks up the slack that the second episode had, which it was great to have a strong start, a medium middle, and then a grand final, which I did believe paid off in the Continental. Like I say, all the other sub characters had their plots. The main characters, the three I've talked about, Frankie, Winston, and Cormac, which are played brilliantly by Mel Gibson, who basically plays Cormac like your stereotypical mafia boss. He comes across as your stereotypical mobster boss, which he did for me personally. There's some people I've read online thought it was negative, thought that he did an okay job. I thought he delivered on what he was given to do. You know, an actor can only work with what they're given, and they can only work with the direction of the director. And he, for me, delivered on what he was supposed to do, which was to be over the top, crazy as hell by the end of the last episode, and basically deliver the stereotypical mafia kind of boss. And that's what he delivered with Cormac, and I was quite pleased. The negative, I would say, out of all of the cast is the actor that they cast as Winston Scott. Now, I can respect the actors. I can respect, how hard they work in the details. But I believe Colin Woodell, who was cast as Winston Scott, was miscast. I generally think, though, he did an okay job as Winston. But Colin Woodell, for me, was miscast. I don't think he captured the essence and the heart of what Winston we've seen within the John Wick films. There wasn't any Winston Scott mannerisms or quick, wittiness about them like you see within the movies. And I understand this is a prequel. I understand that this is basically set in the 1970s. As a younger man, he's still growing, he's still mature, and he's still learning. But I just felt that his performance as Winston Scott didn't deliver in the way I would like it to deliver. I was expecting more, but maybe that's because I'm not used to Ian McShane in that role as the older version. The first, like I've seen, the cinematography is amazing. A lot of the music throughout the series I found very bizarre. I didn't think it fit the tone or the feel of what they were trying to produce. I understand they were trying to, showcase this was based in the 70s by featuring music of that time, but I don't feel like it was necessarily to feature all of the different songs. They should have just had a settled score that give you more of the feels and the emotions of what was going on. There were some amazing scores throughout, but the odd flashes of the different songs I found slightly off-putting. Um, the costuming, the locations, the decor, all were fitted and all set the tone of the world within the 1970s for this prequel to the John Wick franchise. I think that was very well done. Like I say, this was three people's story, in my opinion. There are other stories, but it's too detailed to go into. But the main three I wanted to focus on was Winston Scott, Frankie, and of course Cormac. Did it have a satisfying conclusion? Yes, it did, in many ways. Does it leave you wanting more? Yes, it does. Do I think they should do more? Knowing Prime, if this has been successful, they'll just hammer this out, and that's where it's either going to fall flat, or if they can keep the momentum and keep to the style of John Wick, then it might succeed. Is it on the level of John Wick? No. It's very hard, I think, to recapture what's been done already, and I think they tried their very best to do it. The writers did a great job in creating the world and creating the characters. I I personally think there are elements that could have done better, but I understand, with how John Wick has, and they're trying to recapture this world. It very much is hard to do that on a television budget, but sometimes they just hammer them with the money, so you just do what you want. So I do think they did what they could with the show. They did very, very well. I'm just checking if I've missed anything. So yeah, I do think they have done what they could with it. And would I want to see more? It really depends where they're going to take it next. Because, like I say, this was Winston Scott. Um, this was his background story. This was showing you how he became, the manager of the Continental. The young actor whose name I just could not actually say, who played Sharon. I think he did an excellent job. I think the writers have done an excellent job to be able to tell a reasonably great backstory to Winston's character. Going back to Sharon's character, as we know, because of the success of John Wick, next year we are getting a second spin-off, which is another movie, which is called The Ballerina, which is based on, if you can remember, Angelica Houston's character, which was kind of the Russian mob boss who was using the ballerina school as a place to train female assassins. It's all about her school and the character that was introduced in one of the John Wick films, which will also feature John Wick. It will Keanu Reeves. It will feature Lance Reddick as Sharon, and it will probably feature Ian McShane as the original version that we were into of Winston Scott. So there's a lot of high hopes for the John Wick franchise. It's going to continue to grow, I would imagine. It's going to continue to hopefully bring on the action that we love, because these kind of action films always are entertaining. But there is a point where the bubble will burst, and is the time after John Wick 4, has the bubble burst? Should they have left it at that? I would like you guys to let me know in the comments below. This, for me though, let's get back to the Continental, I'm giving 7 out of 10. 7 out of 10 for the action, 7 out of 10 for the great, action sequences in episode 1, 7 out of 10 for the great final in episode 3. Episode 2, like I say, it's more character building and slows right down. Did I enjoy this? Overall, it was satisfying for what it was. Is it on the level of John Wick? No. Could it be? Quite possibly. but the writers did what they could with the material, and the director, brought this world within the 1970s, which is a part of the John Wick universe, and he did his very best to deliver in a satisfying story about Winston Scott's origins. So 7 out of 10 for me. If you liked it, let me know. If you hated it, let me know. Until then, this has been Kevin Lambert. This is the Entertainment Headquarters, and if you like your entertainment, if you like your movies, if you like your television, please subscribe, like, and share. And until then, I'll see you at the next one.